In the churning waters of the Caribbean, a new global conflict is brewing, one that could upend the world's energy order. This isn't just about politics, it's about oil, the lifeblood of our modern world. As of December 16, 2025, the US, China, and Venezuela are locked in a confrontation that could redraw the global energy map. The recent US seizure of a Venezuelan supertanker is the flashpoint, exposing years of shadowy oil deals between China and sanctioned states. Now, the world faces staggering implications, rising risks at the pump, unstable nations, and a test of superpower resolve. What happens next in these waters could set a dangerous precedent for the 21st century. This is a story that affects everyone, because in a world powered by oil, a shock anywhere can ripple everywhere. To understand today's crisis, we need to trace the roots of a global game of cat and mouse, one that has shaped the world's energy markets for years. We must look back at the birth of the shadow oil economy, where sanctions and smuggling became deeply intertwined. In 2019, the US imposed sweeping sanctions on Venezuela's oil sector, aiming to cripple Maduro's regime and cut off its main source of revenue. Production collapsed almost overnight, leaving Venezuela's oil industry in crisis. The country desperately needed buyers willing to defy US rules and risk international backlash. Enter China, driven by its insatiable thirst for oil, its growing global ambitions, and a willingness to buy from sanctioned states at a steep discount. A shadow fleet of tankers began using increasingly sophisticated tactics, turning off tracking systems, conducting ship-to-ship transfers under cover of darkness, and forging documents to disguise Venezuelan oil as coming from other countries. These methods made tracing the oil's true origin nearly impossible. For years, Washington tolerated this shadow trade, seeing it as a manageable risk. But as China's imports soared, alarm bells rang in the halls of power. By late 2025, China was importing a massive share of its oil from Venezuela, Iran, and Russia, building a coalition of sanctioned states opposed to the Western-led order, and shifting the balance of global energy. China became Venezuela's economic lifeline, pouring in investments and technology, while Venezuela became a key supplier outside US influence. This shadow dance of sanctions and smuggling set the stage for today's direct confrontation, a high-stakes struggle that will shape the future of global power. Tensions exploded on December 10, 2025, when US forces seized the supertanker Skipper in international waters. The operation was swift and meticulously planned, catching the world's attention as it unfolded live on international news. The Skipper, a massive vessel long suspected of smuggling sanctioned Venezuelan oil, was intercepted far from any coastline, making it clear that nowhere was safe for the shadow fleet. This was no ordinary sanction, it was a bold act of enforcement, seizing the vessel, its oil, and its crew. The US sent a message not just to Venezuela but to the entire global shipping industry. The rules had changed and violations would have real immediate consequences. The message: the era of ignoring the shadow fleet is over. US patrols now prowled international waters, determined to hunt down any vessel daring to defy sanctions. The Skipper, already notorious for illicit oil trading, became a warning to all shippers and refiners involved in Venezuela's oil trade. Its capture was splashed across headlines, a symbol of the risks now facing anyone tied to the shadowy world of sanctioned oil. The US Treasury quickly sanctioned more shipping companies, signaling a campaign to dismantle the shadow fleet. The crackdown was expanding, targeting not just ships, but the entire network supporting Venezuela's oil exports. Venezuela's government condemned the seizure as piracy, but the blow was devastating. Exports plummeted, and a cyber attack crippled PDVSA's port systems. The country's main economic engine was suddenly sputtering, with chaos spreading from the ports to the government itself. The risk for any vessel loading Venezuelan oil skyrocketed overnight. Tankers hesitated at the edge of Venezuelan waters, uncertain if they'd be next to face seizure or sanctions. The combination of physical seizure and digital disruption paralyzed Venezuela's oil exports. Ports fell silent, and the once busy harbors became graveyards of idle ships. Washington had landed a direct, debilitating blow at the heart of Maduro's financial survival. The Venezuelan economy, already fragile, now teetered on the edge of collapse as oil revenues dried up. The global oil market was suddenly on high alert. Traders scrambled to assess the fallout, and the world watched as Washington's line in the sand sent shockwaves far beyond the Caribbean. China is the financial engine sustaining regimes the US seeks to isolate. In October 2025, 41% of China's crude imports came from Iran, Russia, and Venezuela, nations under heavy U.S. sanctions. By buying discounted oil, China gains leverage and helps these regimes survive. Iran became China's top supplier, and Venezuela's main customer is now China. Experts argue U.S. sanctions are ineffective as long as China provides this economic lifeline. China's purchases act as a safety valve, letting sanctioned economies survive and even stabilize. The U.S. seizure of the skipper signals a shift. Washington is now targeting the entire supply chain, not just the sellers. The question: will China protect its energy interests, or will the rising risks force it to back down? Beijing's next move could redefine the global order. For Venezuela, the escalation is catastrophic for an economy already in collapse. Oil production had just begun to recover, thanks to China's willingness to buy its crude through the shadow fleet. The U.S. seizure of the skipper has thrown this fragile system into chaos. Insurance costs soar, and buyers hesitate. To keep exports flowing, Venezuela must offer even steeper discounts, starving the government of revenue. Less oil money means less for food, medicine, and infrastructure, threatening the partial stabilization some Venezuelans had seen. The government may resort to printing money, risking another round of hyperinflation. Ordinary citizens are caught in the crossfire of this geopolitical battle. The U.S. strategy: make the illicit path so painful that only legal regulated exports, like those to Chevron, remain viable. Washington is tightening its grip, hoping to force Venezuela back to the negotiating table. Despite the U.S.-Venezuela standoff, global oil prices have fallen. Brent crude sits at just over $60 a barrel. The world faces a supply glut and weakening demand, especially as China's economy slows. Ironically, U.S. actions against Venezuela are helping prop up prices by removing barrels from the market. This benefits other producers, including U.S. allies in the Middle East. Beyond prices, the crisis is reshaping alliances. China, Russia, Iran, and Venezuela are forming an anti-U.S. bloc. They're building alternative financial systems to resist American pressure and reduce dependence on the dollar. U.S. actions force these nations to decide how far they'll go to support each other. Meanwhile, countries reliant on stable energy supplies watch nervously, fearing broader market volatility. The fight over a single tanker is a symptom of a much larger global realignment. Experts see the skipper seizure as a game-changer. Francisco Monaldi notes it fundamentally alters the risk for Venezuela's oil trade, forcing bigger discounts and starving the regime of cash. Saeed Ghassaminejad warns that sanctions will remain ineffective unless the U.S. confronts China directly. He advocates targeting Chinese companies and banks involved in the trade, but that risks a major economic clash. With a global oil surplus, the U.S. can act aggressively without causing a price spike. Timing, that's no accident. The consensus: the U.S. has crossed a new threshold, and China's response will shape the next phase. The risks are enormous. A miscalculation could spark military conflict, an energy shock, or a deeper global divide. The world is watching, and the stakes could not be higher. Every move now is a test of resolve, strategy, and restraint. The outcome will define the next era of global power. The futures of the U.S., China, and Venezuela are now deeply intertwined and fraught with risk. Each nation faces a crossroads, where every decision could have ripple effects far beyond its own borders, shaping not just their destinies, but the global balance of power. For the U.S., the challenge is to maintain pressure without sparking a wider conflict. Will it escalate to secondary sanctions on Chinese banks? American policymakers must weigh the risks of economic escalation against the need to uphold sanctions, knowing that any misstep could trigger financial turmoil or diplomatic fallout. For China, the era of low-risk oil deals is over. It must choose between backing down or openly defying the U.S., possibly with naval escorts or economic retaliation. Beijing faces mounting pressure at home and abroad, as it considers whether to risk confrontation or seek a diplomatic off-ramp to protect its energy security. For Venezuela, options are dwindling. Wait out the storm, hope for a geopolitical shift, or make political concessions it has long resisted. The government faces growing unrest, economic collapse, and the threat of isolation, forcing it to consider choices that could reshape its future. The interplay between these three nations will define the coming months. Their leaders' decisions, negotiations, and confrontations will set the tone for international relations and global markets. If the U.S. seizes another tanker, it signals a sustained campaign. Such actions could escalate tensions, drawing in new players and raising the stakes for everyone involved. If China responds with force, the world will hold its breath. A military standoff or economic retaliation could send shockwaves through global markets and alliances, testing the resolve of all sides. If Venezuela's exports collapse, the humanitarian crisis could worsen, inviting international intervention. The suffering of ordinary people may become impossible to ignore, forcing the world to act. The road ahead is uncertain, with each move shaping the future of the global order. Every action and reaction will be watched closely, as the world braces for what comes next. The stakes have never been higher, and the outcome will echo for years to come. This story may seem distant, but its consequences will reach every corner of the globe, including your own community. At its core, it's about the stability of the energy supply that powers our lives. A wider conflict could send prices soaring and trigger a new wave of inflation. The growing alliance between China, Russia, and other sanctioned states is the biggest challenge to the US-led order in a generation. The outcome of this confrontation will help determine whether the world becomes more fragmented or finds a new balance of power. The decisions made in Washington, Beijing, and Caracas will shape our future. The struggle for control over oil is a struggle for influence, power, and the future of the international order. In this interconnected world, what starts with a single tanker will inevitably find its way to your front door.